I'm starting this episode with the roadmap roundup. We're going to lead into patch notes, and we're going to talk a little bit more about some minor updates with the devs, both on the live and the PTU side. If that interests you, stick around. Use the chapters below to jump around the video. Starting with the roadmap roundup just to shake things up a little bit. Usually I do the patch notes, and I've gotten some feedback that maybe that's a little more in the weeds than the exciting stuff, because there is some really exciting stuff. And I'm going to do the bottom line up front type technology here. I'm going to talk about the RSI Orion and the Genesis Starliner. In the roadmap roundup this week, just released today, we have two very exciting things buried in the weeds. We've got the Crusader Genesis Starliner building, implementing, and balancing Crusader's passenger transport, the Genesis Starliner, as a flight-ready vehicle. And we have the RSI Orion, also building, implementing, and balancing, but it's RSI's mining platform, the Orion, as a flight-ready vehicle. And technically the Lynx as well. The Lynx being the rover that comes alongside a couple different vehicles, namely the RSI Phoenix. I was not actually able to find the Lynx in the list, and to be honest, I'll dig that up later. If I do find it, I'll throw it into the edit. But the main story here is two flyable aircraft that are very exciting for many reasons, and I think the industrial and logistics minded folks will certainly be excited. And this is kind of funny coming into a Star Citizen video product coming out tomorrow that CIG is releasing all about PvP. However, they've just delivered pretty much an early imaginary Christmas to the Indian logistics folks through these two ships. So, like I said, I'm not going to beat around the bush. This isn't going to be clickbait. So I'm going to tell you right now. They are talking about Crusader Genesis Starliner being put on there for 2 weeks on the roadmap deliverables with a single team to build, implement, and balance the the Crusader's planet passenger transport, the Genesis Starliner, as a flight-ready vehicle. And that is going to be in end of June, quarter 2022, so next June. Now, I want to stress a couple things here. They do say as a flight-ready vehicle, but it could be that they're taking a long completed model and trying to balance it and consider how it's going to be. And yes, that might actually mean, but when they're done, when the vehicle concept art team is done, they're going to have a product. But wait, you say, hey, did you just say what I think you said? Did you say vehicle concept art? Yes, I did, unfortunately. The vehicle concept art team is going to re-concept this vehicle. That means that this extremely, I would say, lore-based craft that is tied deeply into the economy, any spaceport you go to has Genesis Starliner symbols on the walls. They're going to all have to be redone if this ship is redesigned, which I likely will be. I'm not going to get into why. But they are going to have to rethink about how this ship is in the current designs, in the future of the game. And that certainly does not sound like the kind of ship that's coming out the door right after they're done, does it? So, like I said, I wanted to start this video in a way that did not maybe cut all your dreams, but also set your level of expectation. That there is excitement in the air for these two ships. And why did I say two ships? Because the other ship, the Orion, they're going to have 7 weeks with it, the same team. The vehicle concept art team will be working on the Orion all through April and May of quarter 2 2022. So the Orion will come out of VCA first at the mid-May, tentatively, and then the Crusader Genesis Starliner will go through end of June through the rest of June over 2 weeks until it can resolve the vehicle concept designs. And both of these ships have the same coded names, just like the Lynx, building, implementing, and balancing the vehicle as a flight-ready vehicle. So, what does that mean to the game? The Orion is a massive mining platform that is going to change the scope of mining as we know it. However, crewing this thing is going to be a challenge because it's going to be, how do we make the gameplay fun for the large crew that's going to be required on board? Or how do we have the NPCs on board handle their pathing correctly and reliably get to their mining turrets, reliably handle damage control, reliably handle transferring of ore if everything's going well? All the different jobs that are going to have to be done with an Orion are going to be massive. The Starliner is complex in a different way. You have a combination of NPC and possibly, in many cases, players who are tagging along, usually AFK, probably doing their laundry, probably getting work done around the house, while their character is in transit between systems. That is the point of the Starliner. The Starliner is meant to be a either active or passive journey to get your character places, because there is no fast travel in this game. You will buy a ticket, and it will be on an NPC or a player Genesis Starliner, and you will fly to a specific destination. And there are some interesting concepts around the Starliner. Namely, players have already pointed out, if they take on other players as fares, that sounds great and all, but how do you kick them out when you finally get to where you're going? So you can safely log out, your ship will be put away. And how do you give them enough time to get off the ship reliably, or do they just simply ejected if they're AFK? Just safely put next to the ship, and that's it. So that's all going to have to be ironed out. Also, with NPC ships, how can you reliably know your character will safely get there alive? And maybe a griefer is glitching the ship so it can't warp forward. Well, is there going to be defenses? Are there going to be methods to put that person, under a bounty or something? Will the AI finally change over when the defensive forces show up and push him out of the way and remove him from the flight area? Will the ship There's a lot of things they're going to have to figure out with NPC flight. When you have a player sitting in the back, that is not a quanta. That is not an invisible frame that only slips into visibility when there's a player nearby. It is now something that has to work every single time, guaranteed, and it's not ones and zeros or something. Well, you know what I mean by that. It's not 3D rendered. So now it is, when the player's involved. So there's two different things here. I think that the Genesis Starliner's modularity discussions, between it being like this first-class party hub with like bars, and in some cases people suggested gambling and maybe some other eye-raising things that could possibly be on board, all the way down to economy, steerage style, pack as many people in as possible. Some of the discussion was 40 persons as passengers, so 40 packs if you're talking in aircraft terms, and up. Through modularity, you would be able to adjust how many first class or business class style seats you have, or even mini staterooms or something, is some things that I've heard players throw around. There is a lot of hopes and dreams tied to the Starliner. They're going to have to kind of ground them down a little bit and maybe figure out, okay, the upper floor will have a certain amount of modules that it can be inserted. The lower floor is either cargo or seats. You pick one or the other. They're going to have to keep it simpler. They're going to have to just take the modularity and keep it. That's the spirit of the ship, but change it a little bit. Especially, though, I could see the Starliner being very valuable in places on the edges of the verse where a small amount of extra cargo that, in a ship like that, combined with being able to seat 30 persons of NPC and players, would be very important. I could also see these as being very commonplace. They're not going to be as commonplace as the Hull C, which at least CIG has said a couple times would be the most common ship in the game. But I see this as like the Hull C of the passenger movement system. And also, they're going to have to figure out how to get players to get paid for these trips, because I see a lot of folks that get the Starliner are suddenly going to have a massive seat-moving ship and not a lot to do with it. And also, they're going to have to take a firm stance on whether or not there's going to be a military variant or a way to upgrade to that military variant. That was described as like a command and control ship, and how all the seats were changed over, and the military brass could use it as a transport, but also use it as CNC type ship, and all these other exciting things that are suggested that the UEE Navy has done with Genesis Starliners. They're going to have to take a firm stance and just say, look, it either has it or it doesn't. I've heard people toss around the idea of having exploration. I'm not saying it's not possible, but they're just going to have to figure that out. So I spent a lot of time on the Genesis Starliner with the discussion about its modularity. And I'm going to flip over to the Orion now. The Orion is a large mining platform. It does not need a lot of modularity. Its modularity is what you're mining today and what type of mining accoutrement you have on board for that specific kind of mining, and what your support fleet's going to look like. And I don't just mean combat pilots. Everybody thinks that. Your support fleet is also going to be a massive chain of haulers that are tractor beaming and scooping the resources that your Orion is basically taking up with its massive laser system, taking on board, sorting, and then refining on board, and then moving it through to haulers. Or it might be interesting, maybe the refinery is not able to keep up, so you have extra. So what do you do with that? You have a chain of haulers rolling, taking away that raw ore. And how does that look? I know at the mall, for example, it's not just that it can hold more, and it has the 3 mining stations, laser turrets, I guess you call them, compared to the Prospector's single seat that is the pilot and the mining laser. It's also the fact that it compresses the ore, which is very exciting. I'm curious how much compression the Orion can do, or is that not necessary due to the fact that it has a refinery? Also, recently, the EU feature team said that the refinery that's on board the Starfarers is not only able to refine fuel, it's also able to refine hard materials like ore, for example, and turn it into usable minerals and other resources. So, but they said it's going to be very important that you use the correct precursor chemicals, and you will need to have basically a full-time person just monitoring that process. And if you don't do it right, it's basically going to explode and blow up, and it won't be fun for the ship. So on the Orion, that's going to be that on steroids. There may need to be a whole team operating like the equivalent of a mini game inside the heart of the Orion to keep that going. Will they go that extreme? I don't know. It's something to think about. And also, will the Orion be able to refine fuel like the Starfarer can refine hard ores as well as fuel with the correct mining implements and the correct chemical precursors on the refinery? This could be very interesting. I know in the past it was supposed to be a specialized fuel scoop that then the Starfarer had taken off of it, strangely. But I guess we'll see how that shakes out. And will the Orion be hard limited to ores to kind of balance it a little bit? And I see this thing as just gobbling up belts. Maybe even 2 or 3 Orions being protected by, say, a Kraken or an Idris with a support fleet attached to it on top of that. And then also the support fleet, including the hauler increments, all commanded by someone else that's the head of the logistics branch, of this fleet. That's how I'm talking. I'm thinking big here. I think that's with the Orion, it's go big or go home. The Starliner is more about the moderation, and the size is big enough to be worth doing the routes that it's doing, but it's not so big that it can't fly without it being full to the brim with people and still make money. I think that's going to be a very desirable ship for many people's play styles, whereas those who are willing to plan a lot more and are really into mining, the Orion is going to be one of a kind, and it's going to be a true capital class mining vessel. So I'm very excited to see it. I see it as the good version of the Reclaimer, even though I like the Reclaimer. The Reclaimer has got a little bit of an evil side to it. It is meant to salvage, and this is meant to mine. I think the Orion's going to be a bit bigger based on how we're seeing the look of these things, but I think the vehicle concept art team is taking this all to task to really see what that's going to look like. And I'm very excited to see what they come up with. So we had a little bit more to the roadmap roundup that was released today on August 11th than just the Orion and Genesis Starliner light at the end of the tunnel. And that's exactly what it is. I stress there's a high unlikelihood that they will be out in Q2 2022, which once again, VCA, Vehicle Content Art Team, Vehicle Concept Art Team will be done with the Orion mid-May, Q2 2022, so next May, and then the Genesis Starliner tentatively as well would be June 2022, so next year's June, that they'd be out of that. But that's a huge step in the right direction. I think that we will see probably rapidly a few months after that, these ships start coming to testing and start showing up. Okay. So aside from that, though, those exciting things, I'm going to go through the roadmap roundup from start to finish here. And I kind of feel better about this. I was going to do this from start to finish and kind of hide them in the middle and try to allude to them. I feel that's kind of clickbaity. I wanted to make clear that it's not like they're coming out, okay? They're not coming out early on or anything. And it's part of a larger thing. The Orion and the Starliner are part of the progress tracker being pushed to Q2 2022 and how far they look. So, and then you also see that they mention we're going to add a column for Alpha 3.18 soon. So I would tie these to maybe testing in 3.18 or 3.181 or something. I do not see these ships as coming out in that, at least the first patch of it. But these are certainly in that wheelhouse. They purposely went out of their way to talk about how they're considering Q2 2022 as part of Alpha 3.18's processing. So we'll see. We'll see. So, Live Mission Content Team has talked about how they have some new discussions about modularity, and they are changing their mission design disciplines, and the AI content team is moving along with their support. I'm always hesitant about these things when I talk about AI and missions, because I sit there and I look at the bartenders and I think, I can't even get a drink out of these folks. They tell me I'm getting right to it, and they don't do anything or give me a minute. And I mean, I just went into Orison on 314 Live, and the bartender was walking into the side of the bar. At least he's there now, but I mean, there's certainly a lot of bugs with AI. And when you're talking about bartenders that are tied to an actually economy where they have to physically pick up an itemized fruit, an itemized liquor, an itemized hard liquor to mix everything together with, it ends up being this situation where it's a little too much too early. So I would say that I'm glad to see AI being worked on. I think it's more of a long-term view item, but we're seeing some new names. They have a team that's being renamed to EU Landing Zones. They have the MTL modular teams going to MTL Sandbox 1, and modular is being renamed EU Sandbox 1. I don't know why. I think that's... And they're creating another team, EU Sandbox 2. So if you're looking for AI information and mission runner stuff, you're going to have to watch for these other teams that are not named after modularity. They're named after sandboxes and EU Landing Zone team. I know that's frustrating. It continues the trend of CIG changing the names of perfectly suitable things that may be slightly changed in their scope, and they go out of the way to change the names. I don't know this, but at the same time, in my heart, it tells me that maybe if these teams help reflect better what the actual teams are doing, maybe that's better. I don't know. So we see the targeting systems to support missiles with improved management of targets for both the pilot and the crew of the ship is a good thing. They're working on different kinds of ammunitions. The first three are pretty interesting to me for different reasons. Particularly plasma ammunition, they've kind of explained it a little better. Larger weapons of this type will also leave behind a hazard, causing further damage to anything in close proximity to it. This will fulfill the original vision we had for plasma weapons we already have in game, and those that we have planned for the future. There's some key words here. The fact that plasma will be a damage over time weapon system, especially on larger ships. That's pretty cool. Being able to use these against other large and capital class ships will be very interesting very fast, because being able to apply damage over time, let's say you really pounded on it a specific key subsystem on a ship by having a hazard that's literally hurting the players inside the ship that are trying to do damage control or just constantly doing damage at least to the outside of that thing. Let's say a shield emitter, for example. That would be very useful. So I think that a plasma ammunition will be able to help you keep pressure on something. It will become a pirate's best friend, and also players that are PvEers, strangely. If you think about it, if you're constantly fighting ships bigger than you, like say an Idris is your final battle, being able to incapacitate the Idris's railgun or the power plant feeding the railgun on an Idris M would be very useful. So I think of things like that to defang ships, to break their emitters on one side and keep them broken would be useful. Incendiary rounds are what they are, causing items in the environment to catch fire. I think this will be more useful against ground vehicles and areas around bases and such to a certain extent. Disarray ammunition is a ballistic projectile that emits electromagnetic pulses, helping to not only damage the target but also to disrupt power systems. This will be very useful against Nova tanks, ballista, disabling their ability to hurt the ships above your head. You might not be able to hold the ground, but maybe you can deny the ballista's ability to consistently fire. That would be really useful, and then hopefully your air vehicles will be able to knock out that ballista. So I really like these two. The plasma ammunition brings up some interesting space-based gameplay, and Atmo, to be fair, but mainly space, combat and large scale space combat. And then disarray ammunition interests me a lot on the ground. I picture this being very useful for those type of things, and also for interceptors. We've already had a crisis in interceptors, talking about they're so fast, but they're so weak, they're so glass cannon. How do they hold down the enemy long enough for their group to get there to actually reap the rewards? The answer is going to be things like disarray ammunition and EMPs and other kinds of fun things that will disrupt the enemy's systems, helping to make the enemy not able to kill you as fast, and also stopping the enemy maybe from warping or the enemy from gathering speed again. You're trying to slow them down. You're trying to keep them there and slow them down so the rest of your fleet can catch up and finish them off, or hold them ransom, or arrest them if they're a bounty, they're bad people, whatever the case may be, whatever your uses are. Space mines are something that's always been has been talked about. The Nautilus is in the game. Concepts, being able to release them in different ways for space mines in a coordinated fashion to trap, damage, and capture enemies or set up defensive perimeters. All good to hear. Save and load features across Squadron 42 that handle player data, checkpoints, and UI. Good to hear. Once again, these are just being worked on. All of these things are being worked on. Aerodynamic control surfaces. Glad to hear it. Atmospheric flight's important. Being able to hit Atmo the right way at the right time. And then we're back to the Genesis Starliner, the Orion, and the Lynx. If you've already missed my discussions about these, jump to the beginning of the video. Although I will add a small little bit here about the Lynx. I think the Lynx is necessary. I think it differentiates the Phoenix slightly more and really sets the tone for what kind of ship it is. However, it's very low on my list of wants. I would really wish I would trade that Lynx in a heartbeat for them to just gold pass the Phoenix, or at least give it a mini gold pass. Make the water bottles in the fridge usable. Get rid of that hot tub, or just allow us to close over the roof of it and put something useful there, like say a docking collar. Even just those two things would make a massive difference in the Phoenix. And and also, of course, my pet project. Please bring back the piano, the Hartwell 88G piano. Needs to be able to brought back in the flare slot. It does not seem to still be working in this patch. Okay, these deliverables are temporarily removed from the progress tracker as the location teams calibrate their planning. So translation, they're not working on them, but they have kind of pulled back on them on the progress tracker until they can get a better understanding of the situation with them. Cutting tier 2 cutting, charge and drains for tier 0. I was kind of surprised to see this go, because that's important. As hand tools become more and more prevalent, especially tractor beams, we're going to need to have some type of balance to them. But good news, you have unlimited fuel, unlimited battery power in your multi-tool with your tractor beam for now. And We still don't know when that's going to be removed. Ground vehicles V2. It's a shame to see. Ground vehicles still need to be fleshed out a lot more. The Cairo cluster. The ground scramble race. Reputation gates for missions, which is a real shame. Reputation's a big focus right now. I hope that that's not, pulling off all the tracking of reputation, because that was a major focus point for Tony Z. And the rest of his area that falls under his pillar. Counterfeiting and data download mission, which is a shame again, but hacking was pushed back to 3.16 for very good reasons. They needed to polish it far more. They were not satisfied with the results of the hacking system. And they are returning to the progress tracker, actor status tier 2, the ladders tier 1 iteration, which is good. The ladders are a little iffy right now. And dynamic population, which they're talking about being able to stream in what somebody would wear, what somebody would look like, what somebody would be like from a specific part of the system, from the universe. It could be from 3 systems away, a hauler that hails from, let's say, the long lost world in the Nix system, and being able to hail from Levski. They're going to wear some really unique, interesting clothing. They're going to talk a certain way. They're going to walk a certain way. They're going to look a certain way. And that's all part of dynamic population. Instead of having 50 different characters from Levski that all look alike, the exact same 50 iterations or less even, God goodness, sitting in your files taking up precious space, it'll simply make what would look like that, and it'll always be random. So in theory, I'm not going to say no two look alike, but it's very rare to see that at most. And you will have a better experience when you do deal with those people, when they come streaming out of Quanta and get 3D rendered because they're near you. When you go to do deals with them or hold them up, or you have to deal with them as pirates, or you have to deal with them as a bounty, or you basically just are passing through a spaceport, they will be there and they will be in their full glory. It won't just be the same copy of a copy of a copy. So interesting stuff. On the 315 cards, I'm going to jump over to the actual release view for these, but just know that they're jumping all the way around all 3 of the release views from 315 all the way to 317. And as they mentioned at the beginning of this, 318, which is Q2 of 2022, like April, May, June 2022, like the heart of the Starliner and Orion time with the vehicle concept art team, they are going to be soon put onto the system. So we will see a lot of different things, but that 3.18 will eventually come along into the system for tracking of release view eventually when we have that. But let's focus in this video on 315, 316, 317 release view, and talk about not just what's here, but also what's on there now. Okay, so we're over in release view now. And I always stress that this is kind of like a candy store. It's very easy to get your sweet tooth filled, and then you're like, you got the stomach ache afterwards. So just bear with me a little bit. Don't get super hyped about everything. Be moderately hyped. That's all I ask, okay? Don't go all overboard. There's some very exciting stuff here. And for example, things like this that jump out, but I wanted to temper those a little bit as I can. And yeah, so 315, we have the Grim Hex Clinic, which is the Green Imperial Clinic. We've seen a more recent photograph of that. I've teased it on like 4 different videos now, so I'm not going to drag it up again. But the Green Imperial will be a normal clinic that looks a lot like this, but not as pretty as the R&R ones. The space station traditional clinics are going to be rather small, but they are going to be relatively full-featured. And then you have the proper hospitals like Orison General, which is the Orison Hospital they have listed here. The new Babbage Hospital. You have Orison V2. Some more shops and services for the Orison Landing Zone. Soon there's going to be an Ash and me collab video covering Ash's first experiences seeing Orison in 314 Live for the first time ever. And a lot of those places that are closed are covered in that video. For example, the second floor of Stratus, which is like their mall. There's a huge store there that's like says coming soon, and you can even peek through the window and you can see like all the construction supplies and the sawhorses and such, and some like it looks like some type of racks to be put up for clothing or something. Uh, that's an example of that. There's also the Orison's showroom, Crusader showroom, which is going to show off ships. And the preview for that showed the MSR, showed a Hercules, I think C2. And Jared dropped a hint in that video. I picked up on it. I talked about it in my video. I talked about it on multiple Discords. But he said something like along the lines of, and possibly in the future down the line, maybe we'll even see my Genesis Starliner. And a lot of folks told me not to read too much into it. You know, of course, we all talked about it, saying that Jared's a huge fan of the Crusader Starliner. It was his new favorite project. I said myself, after he got the Carrack sent out, he had to find a new pet one. Well, he found the Genesis Starliner. And one of the things that's interesting about the Genesis Starliner is it is a true beast of that. It's a beautiful ship. It's got the Crusader looks. It's got the modularity of a cat, and it also has more seats than a Valk. It is a really weird ship and really cool commercial vessel. So seeing it parked into a place like Orison in V2, which it won't be because this is gonna be 2022 when it's even being talked about, middle of 2022. But I cannot wait until it's in that showroom. But we may see that showroom in Orison V2. We'll see. So okay, sorry, I keep getting you hyped up. It's hard not to contain my excitement when I start talking about these things. I try not to, though. Doctor, nurse, AI behaviors. These are going to be important as we continue into Death of a Spaceman iterations at the beginning of 3.15. I'm not going to spoil all that. Shops and patrons. I'm glad to see this. More folks actually doing realistic things. Hopefully the vendors will behave normal. It says like coffee stand, pizza bars, kiosks, and more. And this is showing the Orison General Store at the first floor of Stratus, where they sell like, I don't know, guns, Finley dolls, and energy drinks, and ice cream sandwiches or something, all in the same place. It's a really cool. Oh yeah, t-shirts. It's a really cool store. It's really weird, but I love it. The Broken Moon map. Guess what it is. The infiltrate. Oh, and sorry, that's just improvements to that map. So we may see more going on with it. This is mainly for outside of the game. PU. It's more for Arena Commander, and hopefully eventually. I'd like to say Theaters of War is going to take advantage of those type of maps too, but who knows? Infiltrate and defend missions. Infiltrate and defend missions using existing locations. Yeah, cool. More missions, more unique types of missions. Hopefully, the AI that actually works and doesn't try to insta hit you in the head or doesn't do anything at all. I know that's server based issues, but they really need to iron that out. Physical local inventory support, and this is going to be a major change to a lot of systems. Adjusting shops and VMA to support the required API changes for local physical inventory. You will not be able to stream in things. And then this is one of the biggest changes, the knick-knack system on the Moby class. So hopefully that didn't break the video, but the knick-knack system is going to be your asset manager on the large scale, and it will tell you, it says Stanton, Crusader, Port Olisar. So it's telling you that this is all your inventory in Port Olisar. And it will allow you to control where all your universal inventory items are. And then when you're local, you will be basically holding down F and looking at your armor and opening your inventory. And that's your personal PIT, your personal inner thought inventory. So if you want to look for a strobe, a quick flare to throw down in a cave, you would look down at yourself and grab that quick flare and then grab it and throw it, or look through your backpack's inventory by looking down and collecting inventory if it's not attached to your chest, and then pulling it out of there, switching it around. That's it. Or you can go into your mobiGlas and switch it over to your armor from your backpack, which is on your person, move it around like that. Knickknack is Knickknacks is going to be your global inventory. It will tell you where everything is. It will not have a search feature from day one. So the U.S. feature team was brought out into SC Live last week, and they explained that there is no search feature. There is going to be these drop-down menus that will allow you to kind of thin the herd about where it is or what it is, but you won't be able to just type in quick flare and then find pink and green and red and blue, whatever. But you won't be able to find that right away. So just keep that in mind. It will be down the road, but it won't be available in one. And this is going to make Ash very happy. The loot generation tier 0 is tentatively scheduled for 315. Like everything here, tentatively scheduled, which means quarter 3 of 2021, as this gets closer and closer, we're going to find out what's actually in 315. We're going to find out what's in it, and some of these things will be moved to next patches, or they'll be confirmed, or they'll be dropped completely for a little bit until they're ironed out where they need to go. So the tentative is not locked in. As we get closer to the patch, these will lock in, and I've heard estimates that are pretty crazy, 3 weeks to a month, possibly before it hits Evocati and an internal play testing, is what I'm hearing being thrown around. They are really rapid on trying to get 315 out the door. But I think as every day that goes by, with 314 being focused on fixing and desyncs and lag issues and server fixing, that makes it less and less likely. I can't help but say, like, you can't start the day before, So anyway, FPS radar and scanning, implementing radar and scanning for players on foot, which is really cool. I think of the MCRN armor from the Expanse, having the type of HUDs up display that's very useful. It'll be really cool. And keep your situational awareness up. Actor feature, personal inventory. Once again, you will not be able to stream in 999,000 med pens. You will have to have them on your person. And also, your ship will be an extension of your person. So suddenly that ship will matter how much stuff it can store, not just in its cargo area. Eventually, it's going to get to the point where you can put gear anywhere on that ship, and it will remember every single thing you purchase and put. If you put a bottle of water in the corner of that table, it may bounce around a little bit, but it'll probably still be in that room. And that's the way it's supposed to be. So hopefully eventually we will literally have boxes of snack bars and water bottles, and you'll be able to have extremely long term. You may even be able to log out in your bed. Sorry, didn't mean to get pessimistic there, but I think of these things as important, but we still have game-breaking bugs in 3.14 that have to be fixed. There was just a patch today for 3.14 live from last night into today, and then there's also another patch I've seen on 3.14 PTU. They're up to Y. So we might go into double digits on the patches to try to rapidly fix these issues, test out desync, speculative fixes, and rubber banding, sorting. So we're having a rough experience in 3.14 to hopefully have a good experience in 3.15. My only hope is that they don't try to rush 3.15 so much that they end up having another bad set of bad experiences. I want them to really nail out of the park 3.15 live. Anyway, creating backend technology for healing tier 0 is an example of this. There will be some serious growing pains when healing is actually done in the correct manner. For starters, they're nerfing the Cutlass Red when the Apollos come in. So when the Apollo Triage, the Apollo Medevac come in, which is still down the line, the Cuddy Red will lose its bed that allows you to respawn, basically. It'll go from basically this great bed to turning into a tier 3 bed, which is just keeps you from dying. Like you can take your body that's all frozen and nearly dead and be able to keep you from passing away while they get you to a real healing location. So that's what to keep in mind of. That's a picture of the Cuddy Red, by the way. That's a door And these are the 2 beds on either side that you set as your preferred ICU, and then that blinks green when you complete it. That one blinks green. It's there and there. But that's the rear door of the Cuddy Red right before you go to the ramp. Here's the bomb systems. They're still testing this. I mean, it's very early. They showed some rough stuff on SC Inside Star Citizen on Thursday with one of the sprint reports on a much smaller vessel than the A2. I have confidence, though, that they'll have bombs well enough along. I think one kind of bomb on the A2. I showed the teasers for that for a few different patches already. I'll dig that picture up, though, for this video because that's worth talking about. Actually, no, it's the same. It looks a little nicer, but basically the picture was taken over where the new elevator is, like right here. And the bomb bay looks about the same. The ramp is right here, and they're on both sides. There's enough space to roll a vehicle between them, as far as I could tell. Not when the doors are open to deploy a bomb, but I don't see why you couldn't fit multiple vehicles in front of it. I think the whole old thing about, the C2 and the M2 can hold 2 tanks, but the A2 can only hold 1, unless there's an immense amount of turret locations that take up space in the cargo hold right here, right past that elevator. I have a hard time believing that, because the C2 and the M2 are roll on, roll off. Both ends have a ramp. Even if the A2's rear ramp is not wide enough or does not support vehicles coming in, it could just roll them on the A2 on the front. And it already says it can support at least 1 tank. So if you got 1 tank rolling in, why you can have other stuff roll in, unless it's a weight thing. I don't. When it's an Atmo example, I don't know. We'll find out. Believe me, I will test the living heck out of it. So tentative NPC healing enables players to heal other players and NPCs. This is really cool. This is the internals of the Apollo. That's the front, like where the pilot is. These are the 2 different bays that are modular that can support tier 1, 2, and 3 beds. The better the tier. So tier 1 would only have 1 bed in there. Tier 2 would have 2 beds, and tier 3 would have 3. And you can have one set of tiers on the one side of the room, and the other operating room can have a different type. Also, there's going to be a small reception desk here with a couple chairs. At least that's what they had in the most latest sketches. And then there was going to be extra suit locker. And I think they realized that when they started playtesting this the first time around, or thought this through, people waking up in their boxer shorts and t-shirts and realizing space is a little cold outside and they might need some air. So part of your payment to the owner of the ship, or as part of the organization, they would help you out by giving you a spacesuit, an Odyssey suit or something real basic like that you can throw that undersuit on top of what you wake up in, and be able to get back in the fight, or get back in the mining, get back into whatever you're doing. Get back to your ship, get back to your equipment, get your real inventory. And that's not, oh, by the way, that's only if you wake up there as a respawn, like as in you didn't just, if you were knocked out dead from like not having enough oxygen and you're laying on the side of a moon and the Apollo comes and gets you, or some other ship like the Cuddy Red comes and gets you and keeps you sustained, and then they get you to the Apollo and you quote respawn end quote, that equipment would still be on. They could re-equip you or leave you to equip yourself with all your gear. You won't lose a thing other than whatever damage you took when you died, or if you got shot or something. Keep that in mind. And the degradation is a thing over time. So, exciting stuff. 315. Aegis Redeemer, the baby mini hammerhead with incredibly large guns. These are actually shields, not anti-grav. I keep getting told that, but I remember some type of anti-grav discussion about it, but I think it's just a VTOL capacity. It's pretty good. So I'm going to leave it at that. They're shields. They're shield generators. The A2 Hercules Starlifter, the bomber with the immense amount of, I think it's 7 turrets on the bottom of it, a single turret on top. The thing is basically a turtle. The one side of it is a death spear. The other side is not. That's going to be incredible. And it also has the bombs on the bottom. It's going to be an amazing ship when it can open those doors in the back of its cargo hold and drop those bombs. The Crusader Ares Starfighter Ion and the Ares Starfighter Inferno. 2 very incredible ships. This was nerfed out of the box by having one of its shields removed. but it's sustainable tier 7, size 7 weapon, ion energy weapon. The ion has is really exciting. The Inferno also is exciting, having a ballistic size 7. They are bespoke, so they're going to be balanced around that weapon, but that weapon's going to be pretty good. It's the only thing the ship has going for it. It's going to be very exciting. And the wings do fold in slightly, so we'll see what it can fit in. Not a lot, but we'll see what it can fit in. And here's the bespoke weapons: the size 7 bearing laser cannon and the bearing size 7 ballistic cannon. The Cure Life medical tool. This is the tier 2 medical tool for those who haven't been tuning in. This is basically the multi-tool on steroids. So you have the multi-tool as like your tier, 1 healing tool. And this will be the tier 2 tool. Tier 0 being a med pen being thrown at somebody that gives them stops them from bleeding out, or some type of drug. Hopefully, you hope you get the right one, like an anti-poison or something, or whatever it is. Whereas the multi-tool with a medical attachment will give even more heal than the med pen, and it also allows them to right click, a player that's looking at you be able to right click and analyze your leg, let's say, and see if it's an animal bite or a broken bone or a gunshot wound or stab wound or whatever, or rock fell on it, whatever it is, and what the actual injury is. But it won't allow you to do much more than that. But then you can figure out, okay, if I give you adrenaline, that'll get you back on your feet for a minute or two, so we can run back to the ship, that kind of thing. So the Cure Life medical tool takes that a step further and can actually cure basic injuries, but at the cost of not being multi-capacity. It's a single tool that does a single job. It can only heal people, and it can heal them well, though. And this is important because there's a whole new system of limb injuries in 315, which they haven't really explained too well. This is the tier 1 for the multi-tool healing attachment. So in 315, one of the biggest things that they haven't really explained too well is that you can heal each other. You can heal NPCs, so if you're doing an escort mission, or NPCs can heal you. Really cool stuff. And then also, each one of your limbs, your arms, your leg, your head, etc., has its own hit points. So if you get shot 20 times in the arm, you won't die anymore. You'll simply lose function in that arm eventually. So if you have taken enough damage in that arm until that arm is healed correctly, then you will simply be unable to use that arm. Now, note that the devs did point out something interesting. They said, look, you could lose both arms capacity, or have limited capability in one arm, and then you get back to a ship with a ladder and you're going to have an interesting time on your hands. So do note that the design of the ship, if you have friends around that can help heal you or drag you back into the safety of a ship, is going to be imperative. If you're running solo, healing matters a lot more. It's going to be absolutely critical to everyone, but especially if you're a solo player. So that's it for 315. Now let's talk about 316. This is quarter 4, 2021. You have Area 18's hospital, so that's lagging behind a little bit. You have the weapon charge drain tech tentative that's been moved back. And then they said that they're talking about I think they're even talking about this is going to be pulled completely soon, or until they can really tentatively decide what that's going to be doing. Players being able to slide, so the paintball folks will really like that, and be very exciting stuff. One more way to kind of move around. EVA tech tier 2 experience with IFCS technology, really cool. Being able to properly go prone and crawl around while prone and use weapons with prone in a better environment, that's cool. Physicalized weapon handling, so this is carrying on what we talked about, physicalizing the person in 315. They're going to physicalize the weapon handling in 316. So interacting with and customizing FPF weapons. Salvaging tier 0 tech, do not get excited about that reclaimer. We'll have to see what that actually looks like and how much the reclaimer can enjoy it. If you remember, the reclaimer has that huge arm. It's a one-of-a-kind tool. And we'll have to see how that gets. Here's hacking tech, the infamous pushed back technology for hacking as part of the game. It's like a mini game that would be part of other missions and also help you with other things. 0G push and pull, traversal without EVA. using players' hands. This will be really cool, and this is very important for players that will eventually be using VR. So yes, I know that's really on the horizon stuff, but I would love to see VR come to Star Citizen, at least in headset, a headset with tracking where your head is moving first before, and using keyboard and mouse and HOTAS and game controllers like normal, but at least be able to do that. And then the next step after that would actually be using VR controllers if you want to complete the experience, or stick with the normal systems. When you're using those controllers, being able to traverse using your hands on EVAs is going to be really cool. What we found in other games is that there is a value to having some players that have a mix of VR and non-VR players. What we found is that VR players do some things very well, and non-VR players keep a situational awareness that you will never have in VR. So two completely different experiences, specifically in Phasmophobia especially. That was a really good example of that type of interplay. And also the mini games in VR chat also were like that. But the first one, Phasmophobia, really nailed it well, really sold it to me about the value of having people mix between a four-person team, two of which being in VR, two of which not being in VR, was actually a good thing. And it kept things interesting for everybody involved, because the folks that have VR can take turns not being in VR and jumping back in and experiencing that, different maps, coming back and forth. The two different gameplay modes really adds a lot of longevity to the game. So just keep that in mind. And the surprisingly controversial Hull C that was pushed back to 3.16 is tentative for 3.16 still. I do not think they're going to push this back any further. This thing's got like 4,100, 200, something like that SCU on board. That's a serious amount of resources. I think it's like at the 220 USD price point, something like that, or it might even be up to 250 now USD price point when it's not on sale. And when it is on sale, you know what I mean. I feel the price point's a little high. I think it's like $50 over where it should be. I think it's a buy-in game, but it is going to be the most common ship in the entire game, supposedly, if the devs stick to that the few times they've made that comment. I also think it's interesting that it has large components, not capital class components, unlike the Hull D. So the Hull D and E are capital class ships, or at least most of the Hull D is. So it's going to bring up some interesting dynamics of, can this thing get through jump points the Hull D cannot? And can it go places the Hull D would unlikely be suitable for? Maybe, maybe not. Remember, the Hull D is like around 20k plus SCU. So if it can, the Hull D is a much more effective machine if it can fill up 20,000 plus SCU, whereas this can only do just over 4,000. So it's in an interesting position there. And the other hull, the Hull B, sits like 320 SCU, which is pretty respectable for what it's an internalized cargo. It can go into Atmo fully with the cargo. It's very small. It could probably run by a single player if necessary, unlike the Hull C. So it's really interesting to see where this will go. This ship will make or break the Hull series for a lot of trucker and industrial folks to really decide what they want to do with these ships, because I think these really need to shine with a tractor beam, and they need to be able to load those cargo boxes in flight when they're in space. So being able to go to a mining operation and just pick up all the jettison jet cans, for example, is that going to be an option for these type of ships? If it's not, if they're just like an 18-wheeler that has to be packed away at a docking site, like back into the side of a warehouse, and you need special equipment and forklifts and pallet jacks to move around all the materials inside with a huge crew or NPCs, and they all charge a lot of money, this may not be worth it unless you go the whole DE. If it can do kind of pickup work on a large scale next to, say, 2 or 3 Orions, now you're talking. So I'm curious, like, how that's going to go, or moles, by the way, if larger scale mole operations. Like, I'd be curious. 4,000 plus SCU is nothing to sneeze at, but it's interesting how it's going to be able to use that capability. Ship shield emitters are going to be in, which means there's going to be a lot of folks that are going to have some rude awakenings when they realize that it's not just about people chewing on the number of shields you have. If they're using ballistics and other types of weapons like that, they'll be able to break through the shield, break the emitter if they're lucky and they're able to target it, and then now that side of the ship is permanently without a shield. It's going to be interesting. One side note to this: there is on the Idris, unless they've updated it, there was smaller shields. There was the capital class shields, and they had the large shields, or it might even be mediums, all mixed together. And I always thought that was interesting, and I thought maybe that was a way to avoid that issue, where say the ship gets sucker punched on its emitter, one of its emitters gets knocked out for a capital class shield, and it's like, oh no, what do we do? And it still has all these large shields just hanging out there that you still have to chew through. So while they work to get the emitter repaired. So I thought that was interesting. On military class vessels, they might have backup emitters of different sizes. You know, it's not going to be the same as the primary emitter. You're still going to have an advantage over that ship, but it'll be interesting. Also in 316, the multi-tool salvage attachment, that tier 0 salvage obviously opens the door for that. The dynamic door alignment, I talked about this before. I'm glad to see this. Having vehicles flip over or blow up or damage the ship, or even worse, your friend getting a crime stat because he tried to roll the Ursa rover in or the ROC back into the vessel is not good. This is a great step. I'm glad to see it. Also, trolleys are going to work. In the 3.13 retrospective, they talked about how trolleys had too small of wheels and the ramps were not scaled correctly. All the different ramps on the ships are completely different. And they said they need to more standardize them, and how they approach the ground and hangars and stuff is going to be fixed. So hopefully they do that, they get this sorted, and vehicles can safely get in and out reliably into an elevator, into a system of a ramp. M50 engine swapping, even the rumor mill on this is just, no one knows what to do with this. It's an M50 engine swap. I'm glad to see the competitive nature of folks can change. A lot like changing the tires on a race car, or in series that allow different types of engine modifications. Instead of just one set, this is the way it's got to be, you know, restrictor plate racing style in NASCAR or Formula One that, you know, has to meet certain requirements. It would be cool to see open class M50s that are modified to all get out and high risk, high reward, and good at turning and acceleration, but poor top end, things like that can really tune these ships and really make them interesting in different courses. So I would like to see that. I think that racing needs a shot in the arm, and one of the things would be customization. Also, another thing would be actual, you know, more heavy competitions that are able to be supported day in, day out, where you can go on a track day with your friends and just have a good time any day of the year. I think there needs to be small UEC payouts for those, and maybe even tie it to a mission. Like you have to win the mission to win the favor and high reputation of this local rich guy who lives outside of Lorville in a small town. Then he basically runs the whole town, and he has this dangerous race he runs. And you have to win the race in order to be able to be on his good side to start getting missions from him, and he has very lucrative missions. You know, that would be a good example of how to do that. And then only one of you has to win the actual race, so you could probably rig it if you really had to. But you see where I'm going with this. At least in the early days, it would be fun to have at least some of that stuff where you're racing with your friends, you're encouraged to do so, you're having a good time, it's adding dynamics to the game that aren't just go to this waypoint, shoot something, and come back, or gather this thing off a wreck and come back. Not that that's not good, it's just there needs to be more story, there needs to be more immersion. Okay, so we're almost done. 3.17. Whew. We're going into 2022 now. So, this is why I said moderate hype, not a ton of hype. Outpost, Homestead, Independent, Outlaw are styles. Out of the 6 different styles that they want to do for Outpost, 2 of them are Independent and Outlaw. Another one, for example, is Colonial. These 2 Outpost homesteads and their model houses are basically going to be just that. They are going to be models that NPCs, unfortunately, will own, that you can fly to and check out and see what you'll have in the future. But they will not be player creatable with a Pioneer or anything like that. And by the way, the Pioneer is not necessary. It's just a very good thing to have. The Pioneer can build these type of locations down the road. It will be able to when it's finally in the game. And it can build the module pieces of it, and then you take them and you construct them into different things in that area. You can also pay more money to have haulers filled with modules that you buy off the market instead of just being able to 3D print on site by the Pioneer. And at least smaller outposts will be able to be built that way, but it's going to be extremely inefficient. The whole reason the Pioneer builds it on site is because the outpost materials are huge once they're built. So you're going to need some friends with some big haulers. Funny, we just talked about Hull C. And then figure out a way to bring them down from into Atmo or onto the side of the moon, even if it has no Atmo or not, and then construct those modules slowly in a painstaking process. Where the Pioneer is more of an industrial scale, building huge entire towns by itself. But it's going to need an entire fleet supporting it to protect it while it's doing this, because it's going to be a sitting duck deployed on the side of a moon, and that's not exactly the best place for a capital class building ship. It's kind of like a beacon in the sky saying, come get me, so you better have some friends there to help protect it while it does its production work. Lorville Hospital, Maria Pure of Heart, is in 3.17. So if I picked on Area 18, I'm really picking on Lorville. Their hospital is not going to be ready for a long time. This is going to change the quality of life in these locations. You're not going to want to live out of Area 18 until it has a hospital. You're not going to want to live out of Lorville until it has a hospital. So the real options, are almost encouraging you to live in Grim Hex or R&R stations above these locations that will have space station clinics, and also Orison General and New Babbage Hospital. So you can see how they're really comfortable in these newer locations like Orison and New Babbage. They're less comfortable in Area 18 and Lorville, which are older technologies that have to be brought up to date, and they're a lot more work. That's my speculation on that part. Everything else is fact. You can see it right here. 3.17 will also bring in the Hangar Manager app, which means you can pull out your Mobiglass and do what you used to do on the ASOP terminals. And I think you still can do it in the ASOPs, but you see how it emulates the functionality of the ASOP terminals. So let's say, God forbid, you die, or you were in prison or something. You can open up your Mobiglass and you can start the process of replacing your ship with insurance claims or storing your ship. Everything else that you would do with your Hangar Manager app, you can do on your Mobiglass by this point. I really wish this was in the game from the beginning, but that's how it is. I can't tell you how many times I've taken the train, speaking of Lorville, and many other places, but I'll pick on Lorville because we were just talking about it. I've taken the train, and it's taken me like 4 minutes to get all the way over to the spaceport, and I'm standing at an ASOP terminal, and the very ship I want to try again to work with, because it glitched out, or my own fault, blew up, or I left it somewhere else, I have to then start the process of waiting for it at that ASOP terminal. That is not fun. And then I'm running around the spaceport looking at the same things over and over again for 5, 10, 15 minutes, especially if I don't want to blow the expedite costs, when those expedite costs have gone higher and higher over time. But another bright spot in 3.17, aside from this quality of life improvement, is persistent hangars. Ability to have persistent hangars at your starting location and temporary hangars in the locations you're visiting. So you're going to start on a planetary location. When you first set up a character for each patch, and you say, I want to start out in Orison, I want to start out at New Babbage, which is the places you're going to want to pick. And I'm going to be preaching those, especially in 3.15, coming closer and closer if they stick to this ruling where Area 18 and freaking Lorville won't even have these locations. It breaks my heart to say it because Area 18 is a nice place. But if they don't have hospitals, they can't be a starting location. That's just not practical. I doubt they'll even let you pick them because clearly they're not. But you'll pick a location. You'll have free cost on that of the hangar on that location. You'll also get temporary hangars given to you or charged to you for a small amount of UEC when you go to them to store your ships. And as it says, temporarily. Remember, your ship by 3.17 is going to be loaded with food, water, ammo, probably liquor. They're working on that too, by the way, like double vision and such from drinking. And plenty of other resources and mission items and loot that you've earned over time. You don't want to lose all that. So persistent hangars means that you can go to a place that's only yours, or you can bring friends, and also you will be able to queue up a ship that is just yours. Now, one of the things I want to confirm is that they won't be timers in these locations. As I understand it, there won't be. which is a major part of why I want to player-owned hangars to begin with. This is not a player-owned hangar, it's persistent hangars. It's the first step in that direction. But I still feel that if it doesn't have timers, that's going to be a huge step in the right direction. Being able to queue the ship up and really load it up the way you want with your resources, with your cargo, with your friends, while you're waiting for them. You're not trying to rush them. You're just having a good time, chilling out, checking out the damage on your ship from the latest thing you just did the night before mission wise. You know, these are things that help you immerse yourself in the game and actually enjoy it. I think we forget sometimes that's kind of the point. Cutting tier 2. So they're talking about adding to the multi-tool, the cutting tech, more cutting tech. They said before that they only had like one mission as a proof of concept that required the cutting tool attachment. So that's like a 300 UEC item that goes onto your multi-tool. You put it on there and you cut a lock off, I think, in one of the bunker missions. That they either got rid of it or it's just kept it to that one mission that may have been phased out because nobody had the tool and it wasn't reliable to have it. With the newer cutting, you'll probably be forced to have those tools on hand. And yeah, I think you'll get a warning though, if you go to that kind of mission, or maybe it'll be an extra bonus, like, oh, you can cut the lock off of this closet full of possible loot, on top of what you already get. We'll see. Player interaction experience. The pie represents complementary features and systems related to the player. So this is more just helpful stuff for starting out, I think, and maybe just reminding you of newer of technologies. And then finally, the exciting part of 3.17, the Scorpius, which has a turret that can move from the top to the bottom and flip back and forth. It looks like a ship from another game, although I disagree that it's a copy of it. I think it's, every game has its inspirations. I do love the fact it can move its turret from the top to the bottom, so it can switch from like a strike weapon system, or if somebody's trying to camp one side of your ship, you can switch over. And it gives the gunner a lot more of an excitement. I think being able to switch and then do ground pounding and then go back up to fighting aerial vehicles, that's a really cool capability. And I think it adds a lot of dynamic nature to the ship. I gotta tell you, I did not see this coming. The Hull A as well. I think the Hull A is a great, what they would call like a advanced starter ship. But at the same time, I don't see the Hull A as that exciting to me. I think the Hull B, the Hull C, the Hull D, they're really the really exciting ships to me to really iron out and really get the hauling community up and running. And then E is just so huge. I can't even fathom if that's useful or not. Let me know in the comments if you're really into hauling, what you feel about that, or feel free to talk to me on Discord if you don't want to do that. Red Shay #0001. I'm always on there. Okay, so we went through the release view. Now let's talk about the patch. So this is the Y patch on the PTU. It has occurred to me that this is not live. I know you're saying, but it's not live. Well, yeah, there is a PTU patch today. The PTU patch is actually more exciting to me than the live patch. I promise I will go back and look at the live patch, but I wanted to start with what is actually the most exciting to me about what's out there in these patches. So the testing focus is general game plan stability. If you weren't with us for the entire PTU cycle, you hit the tilde key and type in r_display sessions info = 1. If you're going to submit video or screenshots of issues you're running into, it helps immensely more. It gives basic information about what you're experiencing. The devs can then use the code that comes up, the information that comes up, to help them understand what's going on. Okay, so a lot of these issues are still exactly the same things we've seen in the PTU while we're waiting, including our BFF, the Demon Fang Combat Knife asset. And I wanted to just mention a couple that are good points. Once again, if people were not used to being in the PTU, do not log off in beds of ships. Do not, under any circumstances right now, do that. If you get a bad token error, remember to try to log out of the game and close the client and bring it back. If that doesn't work, you can go onto the RSI website and go into your account and do a character reset from there. I would try to avoid that, though, if you can. Just because it's an extra pain to do that, it's not going to lose anything. This one right here, players that aren't unable to leave a party from the main menu. The workaround is to open Star Marine, then close it again, and then you can invite Fable. See, it says open Star Marine multiplayer, select invite, select leave party, exit back to main menu. It's kind of funny when I scroll past, using a Medipen may occasionally have no effect. So remember to buy a bunch of Medipens, like, have a stack of 10 of them if you're, if you're going out. Remember, you can still stream in, use it as you can. But it's kind of funny. I almost went past that because I'm like, you know what? That's not even a big deal anymore. If you have 100i and you're using it to get around, remember that the Y key will help you if you get stuck with this facing backwards animation. If you hold F and you can't find the exit key because you're stuck in that animation in a specific position, I don't know if it affects the camera or not. You hit the Y button. That's the hotkey for getting out of a seat. It should save you if everything else fails. With the quantum drive issues, if it doesn't work, if it starts spooling with no known cause, just turn it off. Hit the B key again. Don't hold the B key. And if it does spool and calibrate, and then it doesn't go where you actually want it to go, the workaround is move the ship's reticle away. So leave the quantum interface up, point it to the left or the right a little bit, and then swing the ship back again. Sometimes that works. I found a couple times that there was multiple icons on top of each other, so going up and down slightly helped me a lot. Sometimes you might even just want to warp to another quantum to another location on the way that's not exactly in line with it, and then all of a sudden you have an easier direction to go from. Delivery missions boxes from legitimate delivery missions should no longer be considered stolen goods by security patrols. That's a major bug fix, good quality of life improvement. And then technical is back to their vague messaging. Fixed 3 server crashes and fixed a back-end service crash. That's it. So good to hear they fixed a bunch of server crashes and a back-end service crash. And they also made it so the poor folks running box missions to enjoy the game and have a good time are no longer being considered criminals by security patrols. So that's good. Can you imagine the excitement that must be when the first time that happens? It's just going, oh, geez, what have I got myself into? I thought I was running a legit box operation. Now, while we're here, let's talk about the X PTU as well. They increased the power plant on the Hornet tracker. I think they also fixed, weapon capacitor at 90% should no longer disable the 600i weapons. Weapons with splash damage should no longer cause aggravated criminal assault. If a player crashes within the armistice zone, they should now correctly persist spawn back inside their ship without having to reclaim their ship, which is good. That might have saved me when I was alive with a buddy of mine stuck in the co-pilot seat, the gunner seat of the Super Hornet. You want to hear markers should now appear correctly on your star map. Good. And when you change the Moby-Glass's look at the factory line store in New Babbage, editing the PMA after changing Moby-Glass case should no longer prevent Moby-Glass functionality. Translation, it broke your Moby-Glass. And a whole bunch of fixes. Once again, technical, kind of vague, but I did like this. Further fixes for entity stalls that could cause desync. And this is a speculative patch fix, but I'm glad to see it. I like to see they're fighting the good fight and trying to fight against desyncs and rubber banding. Please keep up the good work, folks. I pick on you, but only because I love the work you do. So, one last spot we're going to visit is the live patch itself. This is the... you see, I'm not quite sure what to make of this. Maybe they edited it. Because this is the old patch notes from live, but I just took a 130 megabyte patch update for for tonight, like just now for live. Let's see, is he kind of rolling these all together? Since August 6th. August 6th. And I think this is going to be August 6th. August 6th. Okay. I don't know what to make of this. Okay. So I am not quite sure what the patch notes were. Yeah, this is all the same stuff again. Uh, yeah, but that's a newer build. Oh no, it's not. But I had like 132 megabytes of fixes. Maybe it was PTU. Maybe I'm not quite sure. Uh, I've been so many different things lately, trying to do testing both on the PTU now and the live. I could be wrong. But yes, I'm glad to see that these patches are still coming out for the PTU. I hope to see these patches iterated, the fixes, like server crashes and backend fixes, and box delivery fixing for the new player experience and old players alike who are just trying to change things up a bit. Um, be iterated into the live quicker, just as they've been continuing to do with 314 in a lot of ways. So I'm glad to see it. I'm glad to see all these things come together. Very exciting stuff. Whew. I am going to get a drink of water. I think I've earned greatly tonight. And I wish to apologize about the timing of this video. You're probably getting this Thursday, early Thursday. Uh, and the reason for that is just basically I've been on doing so much work, both in work and then also helping family with some very critical projects that they had to get done. So I guess we'll see. I will have a lot more content coming up very, very soon. And then also the Ash collab video coming out soon, hopefully covering Orison. And if anybody wants tips or ideas or they just want to show off their work, I promise I won't share it with nobody. The Wish You Were Here contest in Orison. It'd be really cool to hear back in the Finding Finley, Wish You Were Here contest in Orison, and maybe even the Connie, the drawings. I know I said I'm not huge into that, but I've kind of had this idea of maybe taking a shot at that and seeing how it works out. But I'm kind of hemming and hawing it. Maybe I might try it, print out like 3 copies, and just see if one of them comes out okay. We got some pretty interesting ideas, and it's pretty exciting to me. I wish the first prize was like, we'll make this a paint for the ship. That would be really desirable to me. I feel like the next great starship inspired me a lot for some of my excitement in Star Citizen, and being able to be closer with my friends and having these awesome experiences as a team trying to work through what our idea would be. Um, yeah, it was a really cool experience, and I hope to have more of that. And I see those type of events like that being really cool moments, and I hope that they add more events in the future. If somehow this makes it back to CIG, I really wish that they would do more team-based stuff, because these 3 different contests are very solo, and that's great and all for competitive nature. But you had 3 different contests. I wish one of them was could be group-based. That's just all my thoughts on that. But I'm still very happy with where things are going. I'm very optimistic about 314 and whatever iterative patches we see, or 314.1, etc. And I am moderately hyped about the future of Star Citizen in the coming year, the end of this year, coming into the next year. And I'm sure that'll probably get even worse with CitizenCon. I'll probably get even more excited, but that's where we're at. One of my favorite YouTube channels for uh, I recently got into 4K Blu-rays. I got a 4K Blu-ray player pretty cheap, and I've been picking them up whenever I find them like reasonably priced, like $12 or something for a 4K Blu-ray. If I manage to find them, I I pick them up and I have fun with it. It's something I've been doing. There's a fella who has a channel called Stop the FOMO, so stop the fruit of the moment. I think that's what it is, and his analysis is very good. He really knows the stuff about TVs and home theater systems and all these different things, and especially his like stuff about like budget tech. That's really good stuff. That's in a reasonably priced equipment. That his position was like everybody can enjoy this stuff. You don't need to spend thousands, and I'm like, that's me. You're my kind of people. So being able to embrace that nature and recognize there's mere mortals amongst us um, is a cool thing. And I think of even like his premise of stop the FOMO, the fruit of the moment excitement and hype, and enjoy what you have, and embrace what you have and value it is really important. And I'd like to carry, I have a lot of influences for what I cover on this channel. It may seem a little scatterbrained sometimes, but there is some method to my madness, I promise. And one of the things I'd like to bring up at the end of this video as like an overtime talk is just value what you have. Yeah, many of the folks listening, I'm sure you have a decent sized fleet. You may not feel like it right now, but if you have multiple ships, you're in a pretty good position. If tomorrow they turned around and they said, "Yep, we're opening the beta," you know, first of all, we're nowhere near there. But if they did, you'd have enough ships to be able to get on your feet and earn all sorts of other things. Especially when you think about orgs, you may not realize it, but even if you are alone now, you won't be the minute this game starts. Even just, I can remember an Eve starting out. I started out with two friends in Eve, one of which quickly left. The other one stayed in for a while, and we met a lot of other people we caught up with and flew fleets with, did missions with, level 4 missions when I was first starting out on doing mining operations, jet cam mining. So haulers would have to come up to my mining vessel and pick up the gear, and I had to trust them with those resources, that they weren't going to, just run off with them. Taking them back to the refinery and then giving them my cut. It teaches you a lot of lessons about teamwork, because if I did try to do everything myself, I wouldn't have made a dime. I would have been busy warping back and forth to station every 5 seconds and not getting anything done. And then later on, you learn about alts and running all them and having this whole chain. And then you realize, but if each one of us has these chains of characters and we're doing all these different things, you realize then, like, wow, we can do even more. Like, no matter what way you try to work around the fact you need friends, you realize it's better to have at least a few friends. I'm not saying you need to be buddy-buddy with everybody in the game, but it's probably a good idea to have a few trusted people you can turn to and at least trust them to not screw you over, and at least for mutual reasons, they want to help you out so they can help themselves out. So I try to temper the expectations, temper the hype, and enjoy what you have, value what you have. Think about your fleet in the span of what your org can do or what you vision, in the future. If you're a combat pilot, an Indy, a Logi, a logistics pilot, any of a combination of things, whatever type of position you want, I guarantee there will be a role for you, a ship for you, whatever you're looking to do in this game. You will find people that are looking for that to be part of their team. And nobody says you have to stay. If you can always try a place out and see what happens. Now, with these starting hangar locations being brought in, it's going to change the dynamic a little bit, because you're going to kind of feel tethered to one location. That may be a good thing. Cities are big. Hangars, space-based areas are really big, and there's a lot of servers. So if you find that you started out in a place like Orison, let's say, and you hung out with this group of folks a couple nights, and you're finding that they're not exactly the same kind of things you're into, or they're a little rough around the edges, and you're not appreciating that, or maybe they're not rough enough, you can easily find other folks in that area. And what's nice about having these dedicated, persistent hangar locations with no fees in one location as your starting spot is kind of encouraging people to gravitate towards those locations more and more. So not only do you find that your friends list has a few folks online, most of them will be in the Orison pocket, and then later on, let's say Lorville, let's say you're into mining. So you might find a lot of folks that live in around Orville and are mining. If you're into mining, they may be going over to Ida to do some mining. Like they're not just in the game, they're in your part of the game. You can jump in, get in the action very quickly, and you're all there for the right reasons, whatever those reasons are. And that's freaking awesome. We need more of that just, it just works mentality. Sorry to channel Todd Howard, but the man sure knows how to sell stuff, doesn't he? But I think that's what I'm more, if there is such a thing as hype in this game that can be positive. I'm more hyped about having those interactions that are starting to build that small community of different topics. And I'm afraid that I'm talking in circles, so I'm going to call it here. But I hope that you got what you wanted out of this video. If you did, I highly, 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 highly ask that you subscribe. I'm trying to do a subscription push. I will be revealing my subscription numbers very soon, and I'm going to be, well, I'm already as transparent as possible. If you have any questions, by the way, about the channel, you don't hesitate to ask them below, or reach out to me on Discord if you're kind of shy. Trust me, I'm an open book for almost anything you can possibly imagine, and anything at all about YouTube. And if you're just starting out, I do consider collabs with folks. Just figured I always plug that once in a while. The worst thing I can do is say no, and I probably end up giving you a bunch of tips anyway about how maybe the video could work out for you. With my limited lessons that I've already learned, I want to see people succeed. I want the community to be built up, and that includes content creators too. I don't see it as a competitive zero-sum game. Yeah. This has really been long, so I'm going to call it. You all have a wonderful day. And fly safe.